What's up, everyone? Before we get to today's show, don't forget to hit the like, subscribe, share, download, listen, and whatever other button there is, and leave us a review wherever you do listen. This ensures that we can continue bringing you the great guests and amazing content like we have today. We have all seen people receive their black belt on the podium after winning gold, but what makes today's guest's promotion after winning double gold at the IBJJF Worlds unique is that she did it at the age of 65. When most people are giving up on physically demanding sports, Betty Broadhurst began her Jiu Jitsu journey at the age of 54. Now a black belt, Betty shares her incredible story with us. Listen as she describes how and why she got started so late in life, why competition is so important to her, the struggles she has had to endure, and her work with Roll Forever, the group she founded to ensure people can continue rolling at any age, and that brings world-class athletes to underserved communities for seminars and competitions. Here's the Roll Radio with 2021 IBJJF World Masters double gold winner and BJJ black belt, the truly inspirational Betty Broadhurst.
Welcome to Roll Radio.
Hey, Gary. We are live.
We are live. How you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing great. I just had a couple good training session, couple rolls with the young studs.
I heard you got some free coffee this morning.
I got free coffee. So. Yeah. Sometimes it happens. Interesting thing. People just give you coffee for no reason when you're a frequent flyer. I guess I don't know.
Works out. So,
hey,
but before we get started today, as always, go to therollradio.com, drop a question either for us or a guest, and you automatically get dumped into a pool to win a free Fuji gi, right? And we will give that away at the end of the month. So definitely listen. You have 72 hours to respond to my email if you are the winner. So definitely check it out, therollradio.com. Leave us a question. Fuji makes incredible products. So look forward to that. All my gis are Fuji, and I love them all. One more, my newest one is amazing. I can't believe I got it. So
yeah, that's the ultra light one, right?
Ultra light, yeah, and it's a very special one for us here at the Academy. So definitely check that out. But
speaking of questions,
what's that?
Speaking of questions,
what's your question?
Well, my new thing, right? We got to talk about that thing.
Well,
right?
That's not a question. Here, let me rephrase that for you. I heard you have something very special going on. Would you like to talk about it?
Well, two things I want to mention. One, it is, speaking of questions, a lot of these questions have compiled over a couple decades now, right? From a student perspective, from an instructor perspective, listening to students and so on. So I recently have been putting out these questions on a separate podcast, Ask a Black Belt, and it's actually getting a lot of hits. A lot of people are listening to this, right? But very short episodes. They're 5-6 minutes, and I just, essentially, I'm answering your questions. So, DM me on Instagram. You can ask me questions. I'll definitely put those out there. Anything from the more recent episodes are like, is it okay to be late to BJJ? Or I'm trying to roll hard, but my instructor doesn't let me. Things of that nature. So legit questions, jiu-jitsu related, and I just essentially give you my perspective. But tune in. It's everywhere on all podcasts. It's on YouTube as well. So, hopefully that's useful too. Apparently people are listening. So
I think it is. Yeah, they must be, right?
Yeah,
if they're submitting the questions.
Something is good there.
And last but not least.
Oh, yeah, look at this cool mug.
I can tell you he's blushing. If you're watching this on YouTube, you can see he's blushing.
Listen, this doesn't happen often, okay? I'm a modest man, but look at this mug, BJJ Fanatics. So recently I had an opportunity to work with BJJ Fanatics. The instructional is out, sit-up guard. I call it gravity is your friend.
Yeah.
It's all about using gravity to as a leverage to reverse the position and get in a dominant spot. It's available on BJJ Fanatics. Check it out. We'll put a link in the show notes of this episode. I've been getting a lot of random DMs actually. I got one from Canada, Norway, and so on. So it's quite refreshing. It seems like everybody's enjoying it, and I'm enjoying it too. So good stuff.
It's good news, and it's exciting news. I'm happy for you. So, but let's move on to today.
One of the more recent black belts in the house. Betty, how are you?
Hi, how are you? I'm great. Thank you.
Thanks for joining us. Thanks for joining us. First I got to ask you right off the bat. There is this picture floating on the internet all over. Very emotional moment. You're on top of the podium, right? And you might not want to talk about this, but I'm really, really curious. What was your thought in that moment when all of this sunk in? You are getting the black belt.
It was, I was really numb. It was so unexpected because, to be honest, I was still elated about winning my match and winning gold. And when you're a Master 7, it was, you're just so thrilled, number one, to have a match, number two, to win that match. So it was totally unexpected. I did not know it. No one had hinted about it. My coach had not hinted. And it was overwhelming. It was like, I have to say, it's like waking up from a dream and it's a reality. Like it had finally, it was like, there really is a black belt being tied around my waist. And I just, the emotions were very real. I think someone posted made a video, and I posted it on my Instagram. And I think you could see the shock. It was kind of like shock and awe, but it was a great feeling. I'm still pinching myself. So,
what do you think was more surreal, actually, that gold medal or the black belt itself?
Probably the black belt, to be honest. I mean, once it sunk in, because it was kind of like, the emotions when you have a match and you build up to being in the bullpen, stepping on the mat. When they say kibosh, your adrenaline's pumping. And of all things, I was able to win the match by submission, which is a really good feeling. And so it didn't even go the entire 5 minutes, which is a master's length of match. And so that alone was very intoxicating as far as, the adrenaline rush, that feel of getting a submission. Because even though winning is winning, but something about a submission just kind of makes you feel like, hey, I really do know how to do jiu-jitsu. Like I really do know how to do a Americana or whatever. So it felt really good. And so that I was so excited, and I just kept telling my professor, I can't believe I submitted. I can't believe. So on the way to the podium, and then I'm going to get a gold medal. So I was still so elated about that. And then the black belt was just like somebody putting the icing on the cake. It was just, and I think for someone like me and the length of time I've been training, it's been one of those things that you never really thought it was going to happen. I mean, you kind of thought maybe it'll happen, but it was and it's an elusive thing. You see people come in and train for 6 and 7 years and get a black belt that are young and physical and all. And for someone that's older, it's one of those things that, like I said, it's been like a dream, and all of a sudden that reality happened. And I guess it was like, I told somebody it was like the perfect storm in a good way, because I won my match. I had a match, in which I'm usually looking for matches constantly. So I had a match. I won my match. I won by submission. I got to be on the top of the podium at one of the largest tournaments. And then in that moment, my professor awarded me, my black belt. So I could not have asked for a better set of circumstances to culminate all in one day. And it was very emotional and overwhelming. So I think it was getting the black belt was just, it was like something I've been not chasing, but you know what? Everyone just said, just keep showing up and training and it'll happen eventually. And it happened when I least expected it. So
that's great.
Well, good for you. I mean, definitely congratulations to you. I mean,
thank you so much.
Achieving a black belt, I think, is a huge milestone. Winning on that level, this kind of competition is huge achievement. But I think it really was inspiring about all of this. And social media went completely viral the moment this happened.
I know.
is because of your age. And I know we shouldn't be talking about the age, especially with females, but this is important. I think this is really important, right? So just to paint the picture here, the full picture, what is Master 7? What's the age bracket for Master 7?
Well, Master 7, I think, is now people that are born in 1960 or before. So I've been Master 7 for a while. And, every year they add another year on, and they haven't added a Master 8. But next year, usually the master groups are broken by 5 years. Like Master 1 is age 30 to 35. Master 2 is 35 to 40. And so normally Master 7 has been 60 to 65. So now we're at a point where some of the women, as myself, are 65, but they haven't really added anything. Plus, there are very few. But now that there are more and more people competing and women, we'll have more competitors. We've had so few competitors, at that age level, just because women at our rank didn't start late. There's a lot of women maybe that are Master 1 and 2 now because they started when they were teenagers or younger, but not in the older groups, and out of the higher rank. There's a couple of, I think, Master 7s that maybe are blue belts that started earlier, maybe a year or so ago.
Let me summarize this. So you're in your 60s, you get your black belt, then you win the gold medal on the world class tournament. Betty, what's wrong with you?
I don't know.
I think a better way to let's back it up a little bit and talk about maybe when you were in your 50s and you started, because I'm going to guess that at that time people were saying, "What's wrong with you? What are you doing this for?"
Yeah, they did.
Right?
Yeah. My children, my mother. People did not understand why someone that his peers were learning to play bridge and golf and things like that would want to do something like this. But I was very intrigued and decided that I went to a women's self-defense, one of those seminars that a local Jiu Jitsu academy had put on, and I really liked, what I saw, and I just became kind of intrigued with it. And I like to study. I'm kind of like I like academia. I went to school. I'm a clinical pharmacist by profession, and I went back to school and got a master's in public health administration. So I like studying, but this was something that I went home and I read about jiu-jitsu, and I'd always, had heard of Royce Gracie, just kind of like from historically being around. And I'm single. I was been divorced, and lived alone. Kids had gone to college, and so I thought, well, this is something that will be really good for me. And at the age I am now, and so I went and back to the academy after the self-defense seminar, and they were very welcoming. And when I saw the ages of everyone in the classes, then I became a little shy about, I don't really feel comfortable, because there was maybe 2 other women, college age, several men, mostly men. And so when I talked to the instructor, he said, well, would you feel better maybe doing a private lesson a couple of times a week just to see if you like it or not? And then, from there we can decide later. I said, okay. So we did that. And from there, he would bring in different people from the class to be the uke to work with me. So by the end, and I was taking 2 private lessons per week. And so by the end of 2 months, I had just about rotated through everybody in the group and got to know them during the 1 hour of my lesson. So it was a very welcoming way for me to slowly get comfortable with the people and the youth, and the people seeing that I was serious about it. So when, after the 8 weeks of doing the 2 a week privates, I started group. And I felt better because I had been practicing forward rolls and backward rolls and shrimping and, mount escapes, and was still not quite getting the arm bar on the right. I was still arm bar on the wrong arm, for about the first year. But, all that comes with time. But I fell into the group, was very welcomed by the group. And I found that a lot of the what we all know, especially I know now, as well as you both know, that the jiu-jitsu community is something that you can't describe it to people that are on the outside until you feel it, because it's like a brotherhood or an organization. It's not like a gym that you just join and pay fees and go. If you find the right place, it's like a home away from home, and it's a community, and it's a community of wellness, as far as like everybody there is healthy. Everybody there is trying to improve some aspect of their life. Everybody there is willing to help others, and the coaches are interested in helping you. And even there are those people that are wanting to test themselves by competing. You'd have sports people and you'd have people that wanted to compete. And so I found that being around these people, I was living a healthier lifestyle. I was beginning to feel better mentally. I wasn't lonely. I knew 7 days a week, there was always somewhere at the gym I could go, and there was someone in there to roll with. And then physically, it helped anxiety or any frustrations you might have, a stress release. Great exercise. With people that are in their 50s, you start aging, your hips and joints and your hip flexors start getting tight, especially if you have a job where you sit at a desk and things. So it was a wonderful way, to implement exercise and cardio without having to go to a gym and get on a machine, which I found was very boring, and I really wasn't interested in that. And I found rolling with men or heavier opponents or teammates was a good supplement for me as far as lifting. I mean, I noticed I was getting stronger. My arms were beginning to get stronger. I could feel that my legs were stronger. So over time, it was like, it was almost like entering a wellness program, not just physical, but mental, because of the people I was surrounded by. And not even when I wasn't, and I could get into competition later, because I immediately, after getting involved, decided I wanted to compete. But it was working and helping other people get ready, help build a big bond, because when you knew someone had a big competition, you wanted to show up and be there for them. So I found that the closeness, and these people were there for you. Even it may not have even been about jiu-jitsu. Maybe your car was at a garage and you needed a ride home. You found that this bond began to extend outside of the gym.
Let me ask you this.
So,
let me ask you this. Jiu-jitsu by nature is very intimidating, even to men. And let alone women, just the physical contact itself, the positions we find ourselves in, and then there is the physical advantages and disadvantages just from a size perspective, right? There's a lot of hesitance in general to try jiu-jitsu, let alone for women, let alone women in your age, right? And it seems like some of these things that average person would see as an obstacle, you didn't see it that way. How come? How come was it so easy for you? How come, you were not concerned about, the physical contact with men and all the other things?
Right. No, I wasn't, because, like I said, there were two other young ladies in the class that were college age. And I had been watching videos, but the contact didn't bother me. Now, this is where my kids come in. It bothered my children. My children weren't comfortable with their mother, with people their age. And my kids knew a couple of people that trained at the gym, and they would hear from the guy, "God, we love your mom. We love having her in our class." And they were going like, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe my mother." They were like the embarrassed kid.
Yeah, I was going to ask, were they embarrassed or were they worried for
Yeah, they were they were embarrassed.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were embarrassed because they couldn't imagine their mother doing something like that. But yeah, when I try to talk and invite other women, and I know what you're talking about, it's like the closeness, the body contact, sweat, the sweat on the mats. Somebody might be on mount and drip in your face or whatever, but I don't know. I think I saw it as something I really wanted to go after and learn how to do this skill, because I was just so fascinated where, number one, it was something no one was going to hit me in the face. I wanted to be able to take care of myself, but I wanted a sport that was safe. And when I found out about the whole, use of the tapping, and that you don't have to get hurt and no one's going to kick you in the face. And I had girlfriends or ladies that were taking kickboxing and things like that. But I thought, there's not a competition. It's a whole different kind of martial art. This is something that I don't feel afraid of. I mean, I'm not afraid that I'm going to get hurt. And I am getting to know the people I'm with. So I'm very trusting of that they respect when I tap. They also respect that, my hip mobility was not great. So whenever, we would do things like a knee slice or something, I would just say, I'd be careful, or I would go ahead and let them pass because, I didn't have the hip flexibility. And learning drills like taking the back, as I aged, it became harder for me. So I had to use what I could do. So instead of being able to pull my leg and throw it over someone to take the back, I had to get a grip and pull them into me to take the back. So, you had to adapt with your mobility, and the coaches and everyone were so wonderful with that. But it didn't bother me because I think it's kind of like going to school when I was in pharmacy school. And when I went back to get my master's degree, I think I've always been the person that realized that I'm never about instant gratification. It's kind of like I look ahead at the long-term goal, which was to get really good at this sport. And so I would just divide it into small doses. I'm like, okay, so we're going to learn back takes this week. We're going to learn, a bow and arrow choke, whatever. And took it for that and just said, it's just like taking a test or an exam. You get through that week, you get through the next week. But the physical touch and that's part of the sport. I mean, so it wasn't anything that fazed me. So
I have a question. You mentioned competition just a few minutes ago. A lot of people who do start this older, they don't compete for various reasons. And I'm wondering what drew you to the competition scene. What made you decide that you wanted to do that aspect of it too?
Oh, because I noticed that the people that were competing were putting in more training time, and they were going on these weekend trips, I'm talking way back when I was white belt, blue belt initially. It were things like, I think, around in Eastern North Carolina. I was training initially in North Carolina, so I was in Eastern North Carolina. There were tournaments like Naga, Newbury, the local things that would be out of town but would draw people. It wasn't really IBJJF at that time. And I thought, God, they're having so much fun. I want to go. So they said, okay. So there's probably not going to be anybody your age, but, you can still compete. And I said, okay, I want to compete. I want to feel that, because it seems like when the people that were competing, they seemed to be working harder, and I noticed that they were getting better faster. And I thought, well, that's exactly what I need. So I started training with the competition team, and it helped my cardio. And so I had my first competition as a white belt at a Naga tournament. And gi, I did gi and no gi.
Walk us through this.
And
What's going through your head the very first time when you were at the competition? Who's your opponent? You know, what's going through your mind? The whole thing. Like, walk us through it.
Okay. Well, our competition team, we were about 23 members, and it was like a 3-hour drive away. We went the night before and got hotel rooms, and then got up the next day. And I was perfectly fine. I had been training no gi just a little, not a lot, because I had mainly been doing gi. So I'd been training probably about a year and a half before I competed. And I remember getting to the tournament, and of course they didn't have anyone to my age, and they said it's just going to be by weight. I said, well, that's fine. So when it was time to go, I remember being a little bit nervous, having some anxious feelings, and my coach saying, you're going to do just fine, you know, just do it there and be the best version of yourself. And I remember stepping onto the mat when it was my time up, and it was my first match was no gi. And I remember looking across the mat, and there was a girl that she couldn't have been more than 19 years old, and was in my weight category, had really broad shoulders. And I thought, okay, yeah, I can do this. I'm not afraid. I was probably 55, 56 at the time. And she came in and double legged me and blasted me probably 6 feet across the mat. And I was so excited, because it was like now I was on the ground, because I hate standing. Once I'm on the ground, I'm fine. And so I got there, and I was able to close guard on her. And she had a hard time getting out of my guard. And once she did, she passed. And she won the match. But I remember I felt like I won, because I stepped out there and I wasn't afraid. I mean, she lifted me literally off the mat and, 6 feet into the air. I mean, not in the air, but forward. But I felt like I did it. And it was the biggest rush. I mean, it was like my adrenaline. Even though I lost, I thought, wow, there is nothing like this. I love this feeling, this feeling that, it's me against that person. And it's, fighters talk about it like being in a cage. When the cage closes, it's just you and the other. And maybe it was just a fantasy of mine, thinking I could win or beat these people younger. But it made me feel good that I was there. And because I started thinking later on in my jiu-jitsu career, had I not been there, would that girl have had a match? And that was a big influence on my decision to compete as much as possible, because there were so few women competing. And if you didn't show up, sometimes women wouldn't have a match. So it was important to me. And I was trying to be a good role model. Even though I was older, I wanted to be a good role model for jiu-jitsu, that I'm going to show up and I'm going to compete. I may not win, but someone's going to have a match because of me, and somebody's going to get better, and I'm going to get better. So that was that. And then I had my gi match, the very same. I think she beat me with a Kimura or something. But everyone applauded, and you would have thought I had won. I mean, people were like cheering me, coming up, and the ladies were like hugging me, people that were there with their kids. And so it was just like, oh, wow, everybody thinks I'm special. So, and then the next match was a gi match, and there was probably 3 or 4 other girls in my weight class. And, went out, did the very same thing. But lucky for me, my opponent pulled guard, and I did much better, on top. And so I lost that match too. I mean, all my opponents were under 25. But I was there, and ended up getting like a little bronze medal or whatever, from my first thing. But I was so proud of those medals, and I was even more proud that I did it. And my teammates, some of them brown belts or higher rank that were out there, they were all so proud of me too, because it was like, I was almost like kind of like not like a gym mom, but they kind of treated me like their aunt or their older sister or whatever. And I think they just really saw that I was serious about this, that it was not anything that I was taking lightly. And the feeling of competing and being, on a mat and watching the other people compete. I mean, I wanted to be a part of that. I didn't want my age to restrict me from competing. So from then on, I just trained with the competition team, and whenever something came up, I would show up. I didn't win a lot, but I showed up, and I could say it helped advance my jiu-jitsu. It helped me get very comfortable in competition, because after a while, I wasn't nervous, whereas you see a lot of people, younger people, and new members to the gym that would start training, or people that had even been there, weren't competing because they had a fear of competition. And I don't know if it was like a stage fright or anxiety. And, but I think by starting out young in my jiu-jitsu life, it helped get rid of those nerves or whatever it is that happens when people compete. To the point, I think the more you compete, it just becomes second nature, as far as you just step out and it's just like going to an open mat. You don't know the person on the other side, but it's okay. I mean, and no, you're not going to get hurt. I mean, that was the whole thing I kept telling. I'm not going to get hurt. All I have to do is yell tap. So that's why I was never afraid to compete.
That's great.
Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, you mentioned something just a second ago that kind of piqued my interest. You said young in your jiu-jitsu life. Do you feel like you've had two lives? Like you had a pre-jiu-jitsu life and now your jiu-jitsu life? And
Yes.
and how, other than obviously the physical act of jiu-jitsu, how are they different?
I think my life before was, as I said, went to college, got married, had two beautiful children, was married for about 15 years, and it ended in divorce, and then going separate ways and dealing with jobs and, being single and at that age, and just a whole different life. And sometimes, I don't know. It's almost like you really didn't finding yourself. I mean, I had hobbies, like I played some golf and I read a lot, but I never really found a niche that I felt like I belonged in a community of people. And your life kind of revolved around your kids. And then when the kids went off to college, all of a sudden you were alone. And I think that I found a lot of the things that I worried about, things that I did is day to day, bringing home anxiety from work. Being a pharmacist is a very stressful job. I was a hospital clinical pharmacist. So we made IVs and chemotherapy, and always, knowing that you're under the gun, you can't really make a mistake, and you have to be so meticulous, and it's very stressful. And I don't think I had an outlet in that life pre-jiu-jitsu to release that. And I didn't have a large community of people that I had a bond with. I mean, I played golf, but when you play golf, you have a foursome, or if you're in a book club, might have 10 people in a book club, but you meet once a month and that's it. But the jiu-jitsu life, suddenly I had an outlet for that anxiety, for the stress from work. I had goals because, I had already gotten my master's degree. My kids were grown and off to college. A lot of my life goals had been achieved pre-50. Master's degree, kids into college, material things that people work for. through their profession or whatever, had a home and a nice car and things like that. But this was something that you couldn't buy. You had to earn it. Like I was talking about, it's not instant gratification. It was something that I saw this as like when I would hear about how long it took to be a black belt. And yet I had, like, as we all hear about people talking about their kid that has their third degree karate black belt and things by the time they're 14. And I knew this was the real deal. I read about it, but that jiu-jitsu life was like another chapter. Some people start looking at retirement and looking at retirement homes and what are they going to do when they're in their mid 50s? Because, that starts happening. I mean, that's what you have to talk about. But I had no intentions of slowing down. I was like, man, it's time to speed it up now. This is the healthiest I've been physically. I mean, so I'm really getting better. And then as I progressed from blue, I was a blue belt for 4 years. And toward the latter part of the blue belt, I mean, I was really feeling good. I mean, I was tapping guys. I mean, I would go to open mats on Sunday. I would, not even at my own gym. And that's when I chose, okay, I'm going to compete on a big level now. I'm going to Masters Worlds. And it was probably my 3rd year as a blue belt. So yeah, that second part of my life, I think some people start planning their retirement. I was just planning on, going to jiu-jitsu more and how much more I could get involved and how much more I could get other people involved, because I found that a lot of women that, let's say they had kids in the gym, or I would meet women at competitions that would come up to me and say things to me like, I think it's awesome that you do that. And I said, well, why don't you do that? Oh, I couldn't do that. I'm too old. They can't say that to me because I was older than everybody. I mean, no one could say that.
I don't think anybody can say that to you. Yeah. I don't think anybody
Right. They could not say that to me.
I want to touch on the women in that moment, but before we go there, that's going to redirect the conversation. I want to ask you something about your work. You said your work is extremely stressful. There's a lot of responsibility and pressure from delivering things. Do you think that there was a big component of getting you ready for the stress of competition and really just the stress of jiu-jitsu itself, since you've been already exposed to that kind of pressure at work? Do you think that was part of that path why it was so easy for you to get into jiu-jitsu and continue on?
Yeah, I think, that's a good analysis, because I've never really thought of it that way. But being a pharmacist is one of those things that, especially, I think, all pharmacists have a lot of pressure. But, you're that last point in a hospital when you're mixing an IV or checking medications that are going into chemotherapy. You are that last person. You're the one putting that thing in the IV bag that's going to go into that patient's body. And the nurse you're passing it off to is entrusting that you've done it correctly and that you've checked and rechecked yourself. And I think having that confidence, it's not like you get confident. Even after being a pharmacist for 40 years, I got my pharmacy license in 1980. So I've been a pharmacist for 40 years or more. And you can't ever get too confident, but you're always checking and rechecking. But you have to have a little bit of confidence that you don't, you're comfortable with what you're doing, and you know that you've done all the proper checks and balances. And when I got into jiu-jitsu, I think learning the steps of a move, I used to take notes, even in regular class, like, right foot on hip, pull left arm across, little things like that, just try to go home at night and review my notes. So when I would go back to class, I could remember, okay, he taught omoplata tonight or whatever. So I would remember which leg and which foot. And I mean, I'm talking about white and blue belt. So I think that pressure and that analytical way of thinking that I had as a pharmacist translated very well into jiu-jitsu and helped me not be afraid of taking on like a new move or a new position, because it's kind of like, as we all compare it to chess, you know, it's a matter of you have to use it's a very cerebral thing, and so you have to use your mental capacity for understanding the move, why it happens, understanding leverage, and all those things that I knew from college, from physics and chemistry and, you know, math. And I could kind of see it in jiu-jitsu, why an arm bar worked when you had leverage, or why, you know, a knee bar worked, or an Americana. So, yeah, I do believe that the working as a pharmacist, especially the anxiety, because you had to be able to operate and be calm and collected and confident, knowing that when you mixed IVs or medications, that they were okay and they were safe. And so I think a lot of that, being able to handle your anxiety in a controlled manner. It's not that you don't still have it, but it's being able to control it and when to release it. Like, there's a time and place to let it go. You know, like I would come home sometimes and go, oh gosh, that was the worst day ever. We had so many new admissions. But being able to control it and use that, converting it to positive energy. And I think that was a good way to translate it on the mats, is using that anxiety or whatever, or bringing my anxiety and using it in a positive way.
You mentioned a lot of women come to you, and right now at this point of your jiu-jitsu career and at this point of your life, you definitely have a leadership position within jiu-jitsu community, especially after your recent achievements. You know, when women come to you and they say, you know, it's so great, it's awesome that you do this, but I couldn't do this. What's your typical response like? What's your train of thought on that?
Well, if it's someone that wants to converse and talk, you know, like that wants to talk, or if they're just saying it, I usually say, why do you feel you can't do it? I usually respond with that question. What do you see preventing you from doing it? Well, and they would go, well, I'm not in shape. It's one of the first things a lot of women say. Yep. Or I'm overweight, or I'm not in shape. And I said, well, you know, this is a form of exercise. It's a form of going to the gym. It will get you in shape, you know. And so that's usually the first thing a lot of women say, or the second thing to say. I just don't know if I can handle the touching, and or being that close. And I said, well, you know, you could try it with women. Would you be comfortable like trying it with me? Do you want to come sit on the side of the mats and let me just show you a move and see how that feels? So I would have a lot of the smaller competitions like Nagas and things like that. Enormous numbers of mothers would come to me and start talking to me about it. And I tried to convince, and I do think, because I think they had young daughters, and that once they saw someone older, much older than them, then I think it gave them a little glimmer of hope. When I was a blue belt, I had to relocate. So I transferred gyms. And when I went to the gym that was closest to me, there were no women. But it was the closest gym to where I was living. And in rural North Carolina. And so I said, well, I'm going to sign up anyway. And they had a kids program, and there were lots of women younger than me, young, late 20s, 30s. And I remember I became one of my best training partners. His wife was always there with her daughter. And I started talking to her, and I said, you know, you really would, you're like my size. I would love it if you would come declare, I can't do this. I said, why not? I don't know. I said, wouldn't your daughter be so proud? Well, okay, I'll try it if you're going to be here. Well, she came, and we started training together and became such good friends. And even though I don't live in North Carolina anymore, we stayed in touch. And I watched her compete at Masters, her first Masters as a purple belt, and she won gold in her division. And she was somebody, and I'm so proud because she's one of the people that I saw from the sidelines and that I talked into training and that she trained. She was my main training partner. And I remember, even though her husband was a brown belt training with me, she didn't understand anything about jiu-jitsu. And I remember the first time on the mats with her, she goes, I don't even know what we're doing. And I said, well, just pretend like, do you understand football? She said, yeah. I said, well, pretend like my legs are the football goal and you're trying to run around the football goal. You're trying, I mean, that was the only thing I could think of to help her relate to what jiu-jitsu was. But it was very rewarding. I saw her at this Masters, and that's happened so many times. I've had so many people that saw me at Masters come up and say, I decided to compete because of you. And I did my first Masters in 2015. 2015. And it wasn't even at the Las Vegas Convention Center. It was in some high school auditorium. And I think back then people used to think it was kind of like the old folks. It didn't have the prestige that it has grown into now. But now and I was a Master 6 then. And I remember there was no Master 6. And there was no one my weight. And I was a blue belt. And I wanted to do it so bad. No one from my gym was going. They weren't really this was my second gym. It wasn't a big competition team. So I flew out by myself. I signed up, found out there was a girl that was a middle weight. And so I cut weight and went down to Master 5. And we had a match, and I lost the match, but I was so thrilled. And the actual referee for the match, we were the 2 oldest women there of all belt colors that were competing at Master 5. We were the only 2 Master 5s of any belt color. And the referee stopped the timekeepers and took a picture of us. And he asked the timekeeper to take a picture and held up the next match. He said, I've always wanted my wife to train, and I want her to see that, you 2 ladies are training. And I was so thrilled at that. And so the very next year, I got promoted to purple. I went back, same girl, and we competed against each other again. And that was 2016. So then it got moved to the convention center, I think, that year. So the only year I've ever missed it was the year of COVID. I did not compete in Masters the year of COVID.
But it has to be super refreshing and super satisfying for all these women and men and everybody else really looking up to you. Is like, you are doing something that, maybe it doesn't seem achievable for me, and they look up to you, and they look at you as an idol in a way. I mean, it is an inspiration, right? I mean, that has to be very satisfying to you.
Yeah, it is very satisfying, and I'm just very grateful that I've made an impact, because when I would go to open mats and visiting gyms, people always wanted to roll with me. And, I would always tell them, I have a bad hip on this side, or I'm not very flexible on this side. And and everybody was so kind and grateful and always wanted to take a picture with me. And I started feeling like this is really something, that everybody should not feel like that this is a sport that is just for your prime, like basketball or something. This should be a sport that everybody can feel like it's okay to do it when you're old, that it's okay to do it when you're old, that you don't have to hang up your gi, because it seems like the only people out there were younger people, usually at open mat. I mean, occasionally there was somebody 35 or 40, male, usually, in their early 40s, but not a lot. And so I started thinking, I really need to somehow spread the word and take this. And I don't want to say it was like notoriety, but, people were seeing me on the mat as a blue and purple belt out there competing at local tournaments, and then going to Masters Worlds and being the oldest woman, always competing, always dropping down to Master 4 or 5 to get a match because there was never anyone my age. So I thought, I have to do something. And so I said, okay, what I'm going to do is start this little organization, and I'm going to call it Roll Forever. And my mission is to let people know, regardless of your age or gender or religion or whatever, you can roll, and you can roll forever. It doesn't mean that when you're 30, because I think some people have this mindset that once their competition years are over, some of the male role models that I had, that they have to resort to just coaching. You don't see them actively competing or actively, they'll roll with their, but they assume like more of a coaching role, or they just a hobby and don't take on the fact that it's okay to roll a lot and to keep rolling even when you're older. So I decided on the name Roll Forever, just meaning that, you can roll for a lifetime or eternity or for infinity, that age and time really doesn't define. You may not be a world champion, but you can still go on the mats.
Yeah, and most definitely, it is something unique about Jiu-Jitsu itself that
roll. That means rolling with me. So
you're breaking up.
So I started Roll Forever, and I'm sorry.
That's all right. You're breaking up a little bit. So I just wanted, Thomas had something he wanted to ask.
Yeah. I was saying there is something really refreshing about the fact that Jiu-Jitsu is a unique sport activity, hobby, however you want to slice it, that you can really continue on for really late on in your lifetime. If your attitude and if the mindset is really set correctly. And I think this is where you are a phenomenal example of this. And I quickly, as you were talking, looked up in our academy, and like we have several guys here who are over 50, and Zook, there you go. This young gentleman right there is over 50, right? Yeah, and shout out to guys like Dan and Steve and Jim and Eric, Bruce, Jerome. I mean, all these guys are in their 50s and they continue training. They do a phenomenal job, but it really boils down to that attitude and mental state of knowing the expectations and limitations that we have as all of this unfolds. And you spoke about this quite a bit just throughout this conversation. What do you think are some of the bigger obstacles that we should be looking out as we maturing in our age, as we get older? Let's just not call it beyond the bush. We just get older. There's a wear and tear, and it is what it is, right? What are some of the main things that you will look out for, or keep in mind as things unfold?
But there's several things. I think the first thing is, you know your body better than anyone else. And you wake up in the morning, if your lower back hurts or if your knees are not cracking or whatever, you know that. And being able and not being shy about communicating that. Don't let your ego or anything get in the way. Like I said, if I roll with someone, I make sure they know, look, my hips aren't real flexible. So if you knee slice or do anything like that, be very careful or go slow. Don't go fast, because I can't, my hip flexors are too tight. I can't open up wide enough. So I'll let you pass, rather than I'll get hurt. I think the second thing is it's okay to be selective with your training partners. Mm-hmm. And I'm not, there's been so much in the media about being careful, about women and sexual prowess and things like that with partners. But I'm not speaking in that term. I mean, that's a different issue. I'm talking about being selective for who I can roll safely with at my age. And this is for men and women, because you have new members as well as, I'm sure, at your academy all the time that come in, and they don't know what they're doing. And it's just because they're there to learn. But I'm very careful that I don't roll with them. I might drill, like teach them a move, but I would never roll with them because of fear of them not knowing their own strength or not knowing what they're doing. There's always sometimes people in a gym that go too hard, or that have an ego, or that are in competition mode. If they are in that mindset, I don't roll with them. And I usually roll with upper belts that help me improve my moves, because I have to use the tools I have. I don't have all the tools that a 25-year-old woman does. Like I said, the back takes are different. My ability to play spider guard or lasso guard sometimes are compromised because of my hips. But what I can do is I play really good deep half. I play good half. I play over and under really well. And so it's using the tools that you have and allowing your body to be the best it can be with those things. And I find that by doing that, you can really avoid injury. And I think being selective is the biggest thing. Some people are shy about that, but I've told people no, that, when they've asked me to roll, just because I maybe have not rolled with them. I don't know them well enough. And it's okay to say no. And I think that most professors and academy owners would definitely support someone that's older. And that's being male or female.
Well, and thank you for saying this, because I think this is really one of the, not spoken enough topics. It's okay to say no to somebody who wants to roll with you, right? And even if we exclude the, guys or people with ego, even if we exclude people who want to train competition and they go hard, let's put those aside, right? There is a big factor of a person who doesn't have bad intentions, but they don't know what they are doing. And that's when accidents happen. Accidents, by definition, is not intentional situation, right? And the accidents lead to injuries, right? I always say this at the academy, and anytime this conversation comes up, I don't think people come to one place to train with a vicious intent. Is the accidents? It's the not paying attention. It's the things getting out of control because we are just wild, and that is what is important to really keep in mind.
Yeah, and I think anecdotally, I've seen over my career, I've seen people that I'd be like, no, I'm not rolling with that person, and then a year into their journey, it's like, okay, yeah, let's go. For sure, because I've seen them progress and change. And then I've seen people who I did roll with, who I'm like, couple rolls later, I'm like, I'm not going to go with that guy anymore, and I'll back away from them as well. So I think, definitely. I think being selective and the ego are the two main things as you're getting older, and at least for me, that I had to really.
And statistically looking, the injuries take place less longer you train. You know what I mean? In my mind, when you are less experienced, that's where a lot of injuries take place, because there is this limited knowledge and we're trying to, win, quote unquote. We're trying to submit somebody. So I thank you for bringing this up, because saying no to the training partner, for whatever reason it doesn't matter. Saying no is okay. And that's really important to keep in mind.
Yeah, it just doesn't have to be an upper belt. It could, even if you're a white belt blue, purple, it doesn't matter. I mean, if you aren't in a comfort zone with that person and you don't know that person, I think you're entrusting your health and your safety. And until you get to know that person, or your professor tells them, be careful. Like my professor, when someone rolls with me for the first time, he will always say, now be careful with Betty. She's special. He won't say I'm old, but she's special. But and they know what he means. But I have found that I have had a remarkable tenure with jiu-jitsu. I've only had one injury, and in this many years, I've never had an ACL problem. I've never, sprained, broken, anything. And I go hard, but I guess it's who you're going with and how you're going at it. The only injury I've ever had was probably as a purple belt. Someone did a triangle mount, and their knee slipped under my rib cage, and I thought they had cracked my rib, and I just yelled out in pain and went to the doctor, had an MRI, and my ribs were fine. But I actually had a lacerated liver, just a tiny tear in the liver. Kind of like where when you see MMA fighters, you hear about a liver punch. Apparently, like his knee actually kind of slipped right under that spot in the rib cage. It was just a freak accident. And it was just a tiny tear. But I had to have stay off the mats for 2 to 4 weeks until, it healed and it wasn't point tender. It wasn't sensitive anymore. But I can honestly say that in the almost 11 years, I've not had any injuries. And I'm very, very grateful for that. And I really think that a lot of people are afraid to say no, like what you said. And I found that when I watch people get injured, or I've seen it on the mats, it's because they didn't say no. And it's usually someone that, let's say, is a new student, and maybe they've been there a few months, and their background is different. And I found that some of the people is, and maybe it's just my own experience, but people like wrestlers, I don't think realize sometimes their own strength. And when you start standing up, I think they don't realize sometimes that a jiu-jitsu practitioner that's never wrestled does not use that same, they don't have that same mindset as a wrestler. So I will often avoid people I know that are wrestling, that are wrestlers that have just started jiu-jitsu, until they learn how to control those, their instincts from their wrestling background. Because I think that's where I've seen the most injuries with some of my teammates, is new people that are transitioning from another combat sport into jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, and those transitions between different sports, are very sometimes very difficult, right? When we come from
absolutely
different rules of engagement, because wrestling is a very different sport. Even though it looks similar, it's very different. The rules of engagement are very different. Same thing with judo. Judo is very different than jiu-jitsu. The rules of engagement are different. So as you're going through these transitions between the sports, it's really, really important to really understand what you're going into and what you already know. From safety is one thing, but just from an education perspective, I've seen a number of times where wrestlers come into the jiu-jitsu academy and they want to continue wrestling, but their progression is not the same because they continue wrestling instead of adopting the new skill of jiu-jitsu, and the moment that pivot point takes place, they are phenomenal grapplers, but it's really those transitions are important, so, and then obviously what you talked about, these injuries, because we rely on some of those dynamic skills that, it is what it is. So, but taking care of our own partners is really, really important, right? If we don't have partners to train, what are we going to do? We can go back to dummies, and that didn't work out well for anybody. So
no, we did that in COVID. That was no fun.
It was not. It was novel at first, but then it got old really quick, really, really quick.
Yeah. They never tapped.
There you go. Yeah, that's a good point. I never thought about it that way, but you bring up You bring up a very good point. Listen, we've been at this for a while now, for an hour. But what's the goal? I'm going to pivot this a little bit here. You briefly talked about your company, your nonprofit. What's the long-term goal with your company? What impact are you trying to make? Because you clearly have a mission with it.
I think the impact is to let people know that number one, like you said, that you can roll for a lifetime, and that it is a sport for a lifetime. So many people now, the children's programs at a lot of the academies that in my area are just booming. They're larger than some of the kids' programs are larger than the adult classes. And the competitions now, like at the PANs, the kids' PANs and things like that, are phenomenal. I'm seeing kids, as well as I'm sure you, that are going to be, I mean, look at what we're already seeing with like the Rotella brothers and all that started young. This is the future. So these people are going to start early. And the fact that they started at the early end of the spectrum, I mean, they have something that's going to last them a lifetime. Someone like me that started, like I said, in the latter part of my lifespan, I still am looking forward to rolling until they have to push me out on a wheelchair and dump me onto the mat. I'm going to still crawl out there and roll, just because, I don't have to stand up. I'll just have to start from sitting. But it's to let people know that, and to let people know that part of Roll Forever's mission was to bring jiu-jitsu out to rural areas, and not to have so many people are at a disadvantage. They can't pack up and travel to San Diego and spend a week visiting gyms, or New York, or now Austin, I guess, is the new Mecca, one of the new Meccas. But I started doing seminars to raise money for Roll Forever to help sponsor master athletes. But what happened is I would get a gym to loan me their gym. Some of my friends that had large gyms, I would host a seminar. Roll Forever would host it, and I would try to get in a world-class grappler to come in, and everyone at the local level in the rural areas of North Carolina and Virginia would have an opportunity to attend and really get to learn and roll from some high-level grapplers, world champions. And this was a great opportunity to get the Roll Forever name out there and for people to be aware of what it was. And then, you had world-class grapplers were reposting the seminar hosted by Roll Forever. And so now it's kind of evolved into where I sponsor several athletes and that are active competitors. And we have a website and things like that. But the goal is to just spread the word that, you can roll forever. And these people that are competitors are going to keep rolling, and that it's something for us all to know that it's like an investment in your own health and your mental health also, is what I see it is. That even that now that I have a black belt, it's like everybody says, oh yeah, it's just beginning now. And then it's like, now I really want to learn more, because now I feel like this is like people take on, it's a forever journey. And so there's no reason that you have to hang up the gi at 40 or 50. And that's so wonderful hearing that you have students in their 50s that are out there doing what they're doing, because that's the gym I'm at now. I'm at an Ares gym. My professor is Diego Bispo with Ares, and we have several older 40 and 50 years old, and he's talked to me about some of the mothers of the kids programs have expressed an interest, and so he's talked to me about having women's 30 plus, because I want to try to focus maybe on the problems that people have with the touch thing, and also with the age, because some of those mothers we have a real active kids program, have, expressed that same thing as like, I need to get in shape or that kind of thing. So I'm kind of looking forward to doing that. But in the meantime, I'm trying to promote Roll Forever as something that is a lifestyle and help athletes that are competition athletes, especially masters level, help get them out to compete at different events now that the masters levels are allowed at Pans and Euros and things like that, and before they weren't.
Yeah, and you most definitely make a huge impact on the community, especially, the individuals who follow you and you sponsor. So if you are listening to this, I want you to drop everything you're doing right now. Go to Roll Forever. Check out the brand. Check out the stuff that they have doing, because Betty's doing some amazing stuff, and it's really worth taking a look at it, right? So it's why not? And we're gonna post all the links and everything to everything that relates to you in the show notes of this episode. But before we wrap this up, okay, we're almost done. But before we wrap this up, at the end of every episode, we have 5 questions for you. These are 5 rapid questions. So think the first thing that comes to your mind, okay? Gary's going to take a lead on this. Some of them are funny. Okay. Some of them are serious, okay? But it always interesting end of the conversation, okay?
Yeah, and I think, it's funny. Sometimes
some of these already we answered.
Yeah, so some of these we've touched on a bit. So I'm always like changing things on the fly. But what was it like the first time you stepped on the mat? When you made a decision, what were you feeling when you actually walked in and had to step on the mat for the first time?
Adrenaline rush.
Yeah.
It was like a new drug.
Have you done anything prior to jiu-jitsu, pre-jiu-jitsu life? Have you done anything else that brought you similar feeling?
No, not at all.
Anything close?
No.
Like speeding or, I don't know, jumping off the plane? Anything? No, nothing.
I think probably the closest thing was academic achievements, passing my pharmacy licensure exam, finishing college, getting a master's degree, a long-term goal achievement. But no, nothing like this kind of rush.
That's great.
That's awesome.
Listener question from Gareth. How do you find balance between your work, your training, your non-jiu-jitsu family, and spending that time on the mat? How do you balance all that?
Oh, that's a good one.
The work comes and, it's there. You go to work and you get off work, but you find, I think with my age, I'm alone. I'm at a point in my age, I don't have to worry about homework or things. My children are adults. I only have my cats to deal with, and they're very, pro jiu-jitsu.
How many cats do you have?
They're the original ninjas, by the way.
How many cats do you have?
I have 4 cats, and they're all Sphinx.
Oh, no kidding. Yeah. So
the little hairless cats.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's funny because most Sphinx owners, I was on your Instagram. Usually there's a million pictures. I don't remember seeing any. The people who own Sphinx are very proud and post a lot of pictures of their cats.
Yeah. Yeah. I think there's some probably in my early jiu-jitsu life, but then I think my Instagram has gotten more jiu-jitsu related.
It took over a little bit. Yeah.
But they're still here. So.
That's great. That is great.
But the balance with work, I think you see that work is a necessity, and then going to the gym is something that is, like I said, a relief for stress. I see it as an extension of family. And it's almost like going to my therapist or going to a therapist because of the mental health benefit.
Mm-hmm. All right, there she goes.
Yep. Did we lose her? Just at the end.
Well, we're still going. I have video. There we go.
Maybe go to a gym. Maybe go to somewhere to eat healthy. And I go to one place, and get all of that.
That's awesome. That is awesome. have you ever wanted to quit?
Never.
No?
It
Nothing?
never crossed your mind.
Never has crossed my mind.
It was never, this is too hard. I don't want to do this anymore. Let me think about this twice.
No, it would fire me up because was determined that I was going to get through it. Like when it would be a move, like a berimbolo or something, and I said, I can't do this. I can't do this. And I would get so frustrated. And then I would feel like all the young people could do it and I couldn't. But then I learned to go through an acceptance that my tools are different than theirs, my legs, my back, and I'm going to use the tools I have and I'm going to do it a little bit different, but I'm going to do it. And so I've just tried to focus mainly on the tools I have and how to use them best to be better at jiu-jitsu and not worry about the fact that I can't invert very well or do a berimbolo. But, I've got some of the best pressure. I can tap people out with my shoulder pressure and crossface.
Beautiful. Beautiful. I like that.
Love it. I love it. Awesome. You scored some major brownie points just in the last 10 seconds, okay? I love shoulder pressure.
Yes.
Me too.
So we talked extensively in the beginning about your feelings when you received your black belt. And that's one of the questions we always ask. So I wanted to change it to what does being a black belt mean to you?
Because it's so new, it's been one of those things that I think we've all met different black belts as your instructor and just in, people that we see in the media and all. But I think it's a sign of, as I said earlier, it's kind of like a dream became a reality. So I kind of looked at it like when I was in college and pharmacy school is 6 years. It's not a regular 4-year degree. And it felt so far away. But I knew if I kept going to class and then kept getting each semester behind me, I was getting a step closer. So when I started training jiu-jitsu, I thought, wow, black belt, blue belt, I'll never get a blue belt. And then it happened. 4 years, I was a blue belt. And then I got a purple belt. And all I did was just keep showing up and training. And I really didn't focus on the color. I know a lot of people, you hear a lot of chatter. So-and-so got their purple belt. I didn't mind. So-and-so got a stripe. I never tried to focus on that because I think being older, I just was more focused on what my body was doing and would I get better. But I knew that was like getting the master's degree or the doctorate degree, because it took longer to get my black belt than it did to get my master's, than my pharmacy and my master's degree. I mean, I'm talking 6 years plus 2 years. That's 8 years I was in college for a master's, but yet I spent over 10 years in jiu-jitsu. So I see it as it was a goal that I wanted and I accomplished it. And now it's going to open so many doors for me and for women and for not just women, but for people in general that are older, that it is possible and that just show up and train. That's all you have to do. Just show up and train.
That's great. That is amazing. All right. And then we always ask, do you wash your belt? Now that you got that black belt, are you washing it or are you afraid to lose the knowledge?
I wash my belt.
I bet.
Good for you.
Yeah, I'm a pharmacist,
Yeah, exactly.
I wash my belt.
So I knew that was going to be the answer, and I knew we were going to get into it. So I have a follow-up question from something we talked about very early in the episode. How do your kids feel about you now? Are they still embarrassed about it? How have they embraced it?
Yes, they're so proud.
Did they witness the belt tying, or they were not there?
Just saw the video, but my son does not do social media, but my daughter does, and she knew that I was competing, and so she knew I would post if I won my match or not. And so when she went on and saw that, she went, "Oh my gosh!" They knew that I was that was my goal. I kept saying, I want to get a black belt. I want to be a black belt. You know, they were shocked. My son found out, one of his friends screenshot Joe Rogan. I think he posted it on his Instagram, and someone screenshot it and sent it to my son. Well, all of a sudden I get this, Mom, do you know that you're on Joe Rogan? I said, yeah, somebody showed me that. I didn't realize it was that big of a deal. I think it was a real awakening for them, but yeah, they're very proud. Very proud now.
Beautiful story.
Good for you. That's really, really awesome. All right, Betty, we've been at this for...
It's been an hour and a half.
Almost
Oh,
hour.
great. It's gone by.
Yeah.
It's been great.
But listen, thanks for being here. Thanks for sharing all your story and all the wisdom that you really have. And I really hope that a lot of our listeners really take some major notes and really some major takeaways, because in my eyes, at least, you are nothing but inspiration to many of us. I hope that I hope somebody's pushing me in a wheelchair when I'm your age and dumps me off to the mat so I can roll.
Yes.
I hope, okay? I hope. And you have so much ahead of you with the organization that you're supporting, plus everything that you're doing for the community. I mean, good for you. Good for you. Be proud of it.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Beautiful
And
stuff.
thank you for letting me be your guest.
Where can people find you if anybody wants to connect with you?
I'm on Instagram at BJJ Betty, and my organization Roll Forever. We have a website, and it's we also have a Instagram page, which is Roll Forever, just Roll Forever, and our website is www.rollforeverbjj.com.
And
I think the link is in my bio.
yeah, and as I mentioned a moment ago, we'll list everything in the show notes, everything, wherever this episode will be, so everybody's going to have easy access to it. But make sure you guys connect with Betty and support her great cause.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you so much for doing this. Your professor said you are special, and I have to agree. So thanks so much. We really appreciate your time.
Betty,
Thank you so much.
We'll
I
see-
really enjoyed this. Thank you for having me.
Betty, we'll see you guys. We'll see you on the mat.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you for listening to Raw Radio. If you enjoyed the show, don't forget to leave us a review and help us make the show even more amazing. For future episodes, check out our website and follow us on all major podcast platforms. Take care.